Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Garden Hour on this lovely fall evening. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Kristine Lang, and I am an assistant professor and consumer horticulture extension specialist based out of the Brookings campus and serving the entire state of South Dakota. I acknowledge that I'm a new host tonight and filling in for Dr. Rhoda Burrows and Dr. John Ball, who are busy with all sorts of exciting activities across the state, serving horticultural needs. So tonight we have two new Garden Hour guests, as well as some familiar faces. So we're going to do a quick round robin and introduce everyone for this evening's show. So first, we have Aimee Ladonski joining us from Sioux Falls. Aimee is an Extension Volunteer Development Field Specialist and our State Master Gardener Coordinator. Aimee, what are you going to be talking about tonight?
Thanks so much for having me, Dr. Lang. I'll be talking about just a brief overview of our Extension Master Volunteer programs and doing a deeper dive into our Master Gardener programming.
Excellent. All right, next joining us this evening from Aberdeen is Megan Erickson, a Nutrition Field Specialist. Megan, what are you going to be talking about?
All right, good evening. I'm going to give you kind of an overview of what Sdsu Extension has kind of been up to in the food preservation world and kind of the different methods that maybe we can look to with the canning shortage or canning lid shortage. And then I'll briefly touch on what our Master Food Preserver volunteers have been up to.
Excellent. I'm going to be taking a lot of notes. So also joining us tonight and hopping on the show a little bit later this evening will be Christina Lind. Christina worked for McCrory Gardens for 12 years and now serves as an independent horticulture outreach consultant. And she is currently based at Blue Dasher Farm in Esteline. So don't worry, we're going to have some gorgeous fall photos from McCrory later in the show. And last but not least, joining us from Pierre is Dr. Amanda Bachman, our pesticide education and urban entomology field specialist. Amanda, what can we expect from the world of insects?
Well, I'm going to be talking about some of the things that you might be noticing as we rapidly approach fall, some things to do with your potted plants that might be moving inside for the winter, and then as always, a cool insect that I've spotted since the last time I joined you all on Garden Hour.
Excellent. As always, all of our attendees, we invite you to use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. And as questions come up for any of our presenters, please feel free to drop them there. And we'll be taking time between presentations, as well as at the end of the show to address those. So our first presenter this evening is going to be Aimee Ladonski. And Aimee, I'm going to let you take it away.
Thank you, Dr. Lang. Well, we at Extension have a fairly large mission. We have a lot of community outreach to do. We serve as the community education outreach arm of Sdsu, and our impact just simply would not be as great if it were not for the many, many volunteers that we have working with us. So we have a suite of master volunteer programs now. For many years, we've had the Master Gardener Volunteer Program. We also now have the Master Food Preserver Volunteer Program and the Master Health Volunteer Program. So our Master Gardener Program really develops gardening enthusiasts into expert volunteers who then share their research-based knowledge with community members across the state. The Master Food Preserver Program is similar in structure and design, and my colleague Megan will be talking about that a little bit later this evening. And then the Master Health Volunteer Program is a fairly new Master Volunteer Program, and it's an earned certification that increases our citizens' knowledge in health topics, and it teaches them to facilitate educational programs for communities. So really helps to multiply our impact across the state. Next slide. So in talking about the Master Gardener Program then a little more specifically, our mission with this program is to provide that current research-based consumer horticulture information and education to our citizens through Master Gardener projects and services. Some folks in years past have thought, I'm a Master Gardener because I took a Master Gardener course, and that's not true. The heart and soul of being a Master Gardener is serving as a volunteer. So these volunteers get an intensive training from our experts on campus, off campus, from PhDs and master level experts, and then they help share that knowledge. These individuals have to pass an exam and make a written commitment to give 40 hours of volunteer service back in a year. And then we hope they'll continue on with us in years to come. And we have a pretty good track record of keeping people with us in our program. And some of you listening tonight might be some of our Master Gardener volunteers. So we thank you for your service. Next slide. There are 16 Master Gardener clubs across the state of South Dakota. Our first class started in the mid-1980s, and there has been an annual training just about every year since that time. Our Master Gardener clubs are largely volunteer-led, and they really drive the ship, steer the ship on what projects they're going to be hosting, which I'll talk about what Master Gardeners actually do. But I just wanted to put a plug in here, a note of recognition for our Master Gardeners, that there are over 400 Master Gardeners that are serving across the state. And in the last 5 years, our Master Gardeners have served over 42,000 hours, which if you do the math, back of a napkin math, that's over $1 million in service to the state of South Dakota. So we're very grateful for those master volunteers and their expertise. Next slide. So if you're thinking about this, that perhaps this is something that you want to do, you might want to know what actually are Master Gardeners out there doing. And there are so many things. I'm not going to be able to cover it all tonight, but just an overview. Our Master Gardeners are out there teaching classes, hosting classes, setting them up, setting up workshops, setting up conferences, hosting conferences, writing articles. Some of these individuals are writing articles and working with our staff on campus, our PhDs. Really a lot of fun. They're developing school gardens, working with youth, setting up community gardens in communities across the state. So individuals who maybe don't have land or don't have access to garden space then have an opportunity to garden. We have Master Gardeners that are hosting radio shows. They're giving television interviews, hosting booths at fairs. If you went to the state fair and you were in the horticulture building, you might have had a conversation with one of our Master Gardeners. And then, of course, there are a plethora of service activities that our Master Gardeners are engaged with, from consulting on design of therapy gardens. Our Fall River Master Gardeners have a great relationship with the Department of Veterans Affairs in advancing a therapy garden there for individuals. We have county beautification projects, labeling plants and trees, working with school systems. So a lot of service opportunities there. And then, of course, it takes a lot of support and time to lift these projects up. We also have a statewide Master Gardener board for individuals who are elected among their peers. And their mission with the South Dakota Master Gardener Board is to help lift up Master Gardener efforts across the state. So there are opportunities to volunteer at the community level, but then there are a lot of leadership opportunities within the Master Gardener program as well. Some of you, if you live in Pennington County or Minnehaha County, there are spring events in the cities of Pierre and Aberdeen and Watertown, Custer area. We have plant sales and education events, and that's all Master Gardener run. So we're, again, really grateful to those volunteers for helping to lift that up. And in exchange, we provide them with expertise from our experts, both on campus and at our Extension Regional Centers. Next slide. Okay, so in the bottom right-hand corner here, you see a gentleman by the name of Dr. David Gibby. He and his colleague, Bill Shear, were extension agents at Washington State University. And in 1973, they were so overwhelmed with just a flood of questions, gardening questions, that it was difficult for them to keep up. I know Dr. Lang and Dr. Bachman here on Garden Hour with us tonight can relate to that feeling probably. And so they said, gosh, we really kind of need a small army to help us answer all these questions. So they kind of built that. In 1973, they hosted the first Master Gardener volunteer class and trained these volunteers to answer the public's questions, to provide educational opportunities to the public. And it took off from there. And now the Master Gardener program exists in all 50 states and several countries. So if you are interested in joining us, be thinking about it over the winter months. We host our training once each year in the spring. Dr. Bachman and Dr. Lang, who are on with us this evening, are trainers within that program, and then several others that I'm sure you've met in Garden Hour if you've joined us before. It is a hybrid course, so the course is both online and in person. Those in-person sessions are hosted in several locations across the state, and typically those locations change each year, so we can try to get to as much of the interested population as we can. The course is about 12 weeks and approximately 40 to 50 hours of time commitment. And then if you are taking the Master Gardener volunteer option with that, then we would ask for 40 hours of volunteer service in return. It's, as I mentioned earlier, this is taught by our Sdsu experts, and we will have open applications in the early spring. If you're interested, you can email us at that email address below, sdsu.stmg@sdstate.edu, or visit our website. We plug our website all the time, I know, on Garden Hour, and there's a contact us button to make it easy for you there. Thanks so much for having me, Dr. Lang. I'm happy to answer any questions folks might have.
All right, if you have questions about the Master Gardener volunteer program, please feel free to drop those in the Q&A. And while folks are thinking about those questions, I really want to echo Amy's thanks to our current Master Gardeners who are on tonight's call and listening in. And for those of you, especially if you've been returning to Garden Hour each week and you really like learning about these topics and would like to volunteer and apply these things in your community, we would definitely love to have you.
And Dr. Lang, I just want to reiterate too, I threw out a few locations during my talk, but that is not to exclude those of you who are in other locations. There are 16 locations, and we appreciate all of you equally. I do see a question that came in here from Rose. Rose wants to know if the class costs anything. So there is an option to take the Master Gardener course at what we call full price. And that means if you take it at full price, then you don't owe us a volunteer commitment at all. There are some folks who just feel like their schedules are too busy and they don't want to do that. So that price is $500. It is essentially an abbreviated college course. So if you're feeling some sticker shock there, that's why. And then it's half price for those that commit to serve as a Master Gardener volunteer. And I don't think I covered this in the presentation. I'm going to look over at my cheat sheet here a little bit. But some of the course content includes things like botany, plant nomenclature, taxonomy, soil health, nutrient management, plant diseases, propagation, herbaceous landscape plants, indoor plants, vertebrate pests, weeds, intro to lawn. You get the idea. It really covers the gamut. So there's a lot of content, really dynamic speakers. We're so fortunate to have the coalition of speakers and staff that we do to present that course. So thanks for the question, Rose.
And Amy, what were some of the things, and I can speak to this as well, but what were some of the things that people got to do at the in-person training this year as far as hands-on activities?
Well, it's kind of fun. We start out the course, particularly because of the pandemic, we had a lot of focus on the virtual component of the course at the front end of the course. And so you're getting to see these folks on video, these trainers on videos, and then suddenly they're live and in person. And you get to walk with Dr. Ball, do a pre-tour, and really do a lot of hands-on exchanges. You get to do the same with Dr. Lang and do some hands-on propagation. Same thing with Dr. Amanda Bachman. She brings her nets. She brings nets. You feel like a kid again, right? In science class, and you're catching insects and you're talking about all of the things live, up close, and in person that you learned. You spent so much time on your virtual learning. But Dr. Lang, would you mind sharing just a snippet of what you did during your in-person session? You'll do it much more justice than I would.
Yes. So for my in-person session, we learned how to take herbaceous plant cuttings, and I had literally a van full of house plants that went around the state, and I had colleagues who helped me load and unload everything. But everyone left with multiple new house plants. And I guess, Amanda Bachman, this is a great time to ask you how your house plants are doing. But we took, you're laughing in a way that makes me worried. How are they doing?
The succulents did very well.
Okay.
The herbaceous ones are living life outside right now. I need to pot them into something real, but I think some of them have survived.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's good. You had me worried for a minute. See, and you know what? We learn, just like with anything, if you really want that plant, you should take more than one cutting of each, because sometimes the first one doesn't take through no fault of your own. All right. Oh, we have a recommendation or expression of gratitude in the chat. Thank you, Kathy, for recommending. She recommends the Master Gardener course, and I thought I knew a lot about gardening, but feel like a whole new world has opened with this course. Well, thank you, Kathy. We really appreciate that.
And Dr. Lang, I'm going to jump in. Dr. Lang is humble, so she wouldn't say this part out loud, but Kathy said the faculty are amazing, and it opened up so many doors to her gardening knowledge. So I'm going to share what you were too humble to share there, Dr. Lang. So thank you to Dr. Bachman and Dr. Lang for your many contributions to that course. And for those of you that are listening in on Garden Hour tonight that haven't taken the course yet, we hope you'll join us.
Yes, we certainly do. Now, I know, Amy, you're going to have to jump off of tonight's call. And if any other questions come up, I'll be happy to try to address them at the end of the session or pass them along to you. Very, very quickly, why are you jumping off? What's going on this weekend? It's, you know, the main event.
Yes, this weekend we have our Master Gardener Annual Update Conference, and it is a time for our Master Gardeners from across the state to come together, to enjoy each other's company, to celebrate each other's work, to receive awards, to give awards, and most importantly, to enhance their gardening knowledge. So there's a wonderful slate of speakers, and a lot of this event is volunteer-led as well. So our Master Gardener clubs take turns on which city hosts, which club hosts. And we're just so excited that the Huron Area Master Gardeners and Dakota Prairie Master Gardeners are hosting for us this weekend. So yes, I am going to be packing some boxes and getting some things ready to go tonight to drop off to Huron tomorrow.
Well, excellent. Thank you so much for joining us, Amy. We really appreciate it. And transitioning from one volunteer program to another, and here to answer the looming question of what do I do with all this garden produce, is Megan Erickson. So Megan, I'm going to let you take it away.
Yes, it's kind of a natural transition, talking about master gardeners, getting your garden planted, harvesting it. Now what if you have an overabundance of produce? What do you do with it? So, all right. So thank you again for having me. And I'm going to talk on food preservation. So food preservation, as you know, is just a way to preserve the freshness of homegrown or even locally purchased foods, whether that's canning, freezing, drying. There's so many different methods to preserve, not just canning alone. And so I want to do a quick poll. So that's going to show up on your screen. And my question to you is, what is your favorite thing to can? So I have a few options up there. Give it time and all right, there we go. What is
Sorry
your
about
favorite?
that.
No, that's okay. So if you want to select what is your favorite produce, I tried to list out as many as I could. Of course, this is just a small sample of what we can. But go ahead and take your vote. And we'll see what the most popular is. I personally love to can peaches. I feel like there's nothing better than the fresh taste of a peach in the dead of winter. So that is what I really love to do. And I kind of did a combination of both this year. I canned peaches, but then I also froze some. I like to throw frozen peaches into some smoothies. My kids really love that. Okay, are we
All
able
right,
to
we'll
show
close the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Those two people who haven't answered, I'm sorry, we just got to close it.
Okay. So we got tomatoes. Yes, I didn't do tomatoes this year. I did a whole bunch last year. Pickles. We got some peaches and we got some jam and jelly lovers. Awesome. Thank you guys for sharing. Okay, so I want to touch on the canning craze. So I grew up canning with my grandma, and then go off to school, get busy, and kind of got out of it. And then now with my job, I've really gotten more into it, which I love. And I feel like food preservation and specifically canning had become like kind of a lost art, and I feel like has grown more popular lately, and especially within this last year, due to COVID. COVID, people were buying in bulk, or a lot of people were starting to grow their own gardens, and so they had this excess produce, and so they may not have been able to eat it really quickly, so they were looking to ways to preserve it so it wouldn't go to waste. So a lot of people then turned to canning. And so we really saw, or some people were buying bulk, whether there was a good sale on produce or a good sale on meat. And then maybe they were wanting to freeze some of that food that they weren't able to use up. But here's some just pictures. My intern last year did those beautiful pickles. Mine never turn out like that. And then there's a picture of the peaches that I did, and that was before I lowered them into the water. So then with kind of the increase of canning there, then with COVID, so we already had, the people who always canned, but then we had this influx of new people wanting to can and learn, which meant supplies were low. So I don't know about in your area, but in the Aberdeen area, it is hard to find canning lids. And so the thing that I get calls on is a canning lid shortage. What can I do? What can I do instead? And also with the canning lid shortage, there are other products out there. So generic lids that people are buying that may not produce the best quality. You can see in the two pictures on the right, this is a picture I received. They were canning quartz pickles. You can see on the far right, this is immediately when she took them out of the canner. You can see how it almost like buckled and it domed up. And then as they cooled, they settled. But then you can kind of see there's some divots. So her question was, are these safe to eat or safe to store? Are they processed okay? The easy answer is they are not, they weren't sealed correctly with that bulge in the lid. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to keep them on their shelf, but I did recommend she could, since they were heat treated, followed a tested recipe, she was able to store them in her fridge to preserve, maybe not up until the 18 months, but for a shorter amount of time. So with the increase in canning, there became a shortage of certain canning supplies. So I just want people to be aware of, making sure that you're buying reliable equipment, making sure, a lot of the lids that maybe the companies from overseas, people are having a lot of seal failures, and a lot of the generic lids. So maybe not like the Ball lids or the Ball brand lids that are durable. They have been tested, are good for seals. They're going to produce a quality sealed product. So just that's something to keep in mind when you're looking for lids. And the Ball company is aware, they hear our frustration, we just want to can, we want lids. They've ramped up their production to ensure the highest standard of safety for both, the employees and retail partners. But also with that increased production, they're still not meeting the demand. So they said, be patient. In the means, what can we do if we can't find lids and we can't can? So that kind of transitions to my next slide, is what are some other methods of food preservation? So the first is, freezing. I touched on freezing, my favorite thing. I don't like canning corn. You would have to pressure can corn. So I like to freeze corn, and I kind of grew up, we're farmers where we grew our own sweet corn, and it was kind of this whole big family ordeal where we would go and pick it and husk it in the back of the truck. And those are some of my favorite memories. So freezing is a great way as long as you have the storage space. Every produce item has its own kind of instructions, I would say, on how to freeze. Whether you need to blanch the food, so dipping your fruit or vegetables in to boiling water quickly, that kind of stops the production of enzymes. And those enzymes are going to maybe change the color and the texture of your food. Freezing is a great way for bulk meat. So if you're buying a whole bunch of chicken on sale or beef or whatever your preferred meat choice is, freezing is a great way to extend the shelf life. Texture might be altered a little bit, but food safety wise, completely fine, depending on making sure that you're following the correct steps. Color change might be another thing. I know in my peaches, when I freeze them, if I ran out of like ascorbic acid or lemon juice or something to prevent the browning, I sprinkled some fruit fresh over the top to prevent browning, but there is sometimes always a color change, but that's not going to change the quality of it. It's still going to preserve your food and extend the quality or the shelf life of that food. So freezing is one. The other is, and transition to my next one, is dehydrating. And I've kind of gotten into this a little bit more, which is super fun. But so many foods you can dry. There's oven drying, kind of the one if you have like an actual drying dehydrator and equipment. You can see several foods on here. Apple slices, my kids love these. Peaches, tomatoes. If you have an herb garden, a great way is to dry your herbs and save them for later. Whether you, this is a picture I have of mint. So putting them in ice cube trays, and then it's all ready to go for if you want a little mint flavor in your water to spicing it up. But drying is drying is one of the oldest methods of food preservation. So kind of eliminating and drying out all of that moisture in the food that, so bacteria doesn't grow. So drying is another great method of food preservation and easy to do just in your oven. And again, every food has its own instructions depending on what type of method of drying you're doing. But we have a lot of great resources on our website that you can look to. We have our Pick It, Try It, Like It, Preserve It materials that will give you instructions on every food preservation method for different produce items. So that is a resource that we have for you. All right, I am going to now kind of dive in. Aimee kind of touched on our suite of volunteer programs, and one of them is our Master Food Preserver program, which is kind of new. We launched last year, so this was our second year. And of course, we launched anticipating to be in person, and then the pandemic hit, and we still, we felt there was a need. There's only two of us that lead the food preservation efforts within Extension, and really felt the need that we needed to reach more. So how could we do that? We have enlisted the help of our volunteers, and let me tell you, we are small but mighty. We don't have the 400 volunteers like Master Gardener, but I'm hopeful in years, maybe we can get up to that. But we currently have 22 volunteers in our volunteer program, and they are the boots on the ground. They are the ones that are helping us reach all across the state to help spread the good word and safe practices of food preservation. These volunteers are going to farmers market. They have booths at farmers markets. They are connecting with Girl Scouts, our 4-H youth. They are also doing articles for newspapers, connecting at the state fair. So if you were at the state fair, we did have a couple presentations that were performed by our volunteers. But they have made this program successful. But to give you a little, our volunteer program, we recruit in the spring. So be on the lookout. Spring of 22, we're going to be recruiting. We do have our training is online. You will come to a half-day training online that is put on by my colleague and I. Prior to that, we do have online modules that kind of really dive into in depth of food preservation methods, but other tools for success for our volunteers so that they can be successful in what they do as a volunteer. But you can expect up to 40 hours of online training that's done before you kind of do that live, I would say live on Zoom training with Hope and I, my colleague. And then within that first year, it's expected of our volunteers to put in 40 hours of service within that first year. And then after that, 20 hours. There is a cost. We have a $150 fee associated with our program. And that by the end of the program, volunteers are hopefully feeling confident in going out to the community and helping to spread their knowledge. They receive a binder from us, a whole ton of resources, and just kind of free technical support from us. And we rally together, and any kind of questions that come our way, we're leaning on each other. So I put some fun pictures, kind of what our volunteers have been up to. A fun one, I think the two left, they did applesauce. So the youth thought that was great in canning some applesauce. And then Tim is one of our master food preservers, and he was doing kind of a informational booth at a farmer's market. So a lot of great connections and getting out into the community. But again, our volunteer program would not be what it is without our volunteers. And they are such a fun group. And I just love hearing everybody's story. I feel like everybody has a story when it comes to food preservation. So that's kind of one of my favorite things to learn on. All right. And then next here are a couple of resources. So we really, if I had to pick a couple things to take away for food preservation, is a reliable recipe. So whether you're canning, freezing, especially with canning, water bath canning and pressure canning, where you are using a trusted recipe is number one. They have been tested, the pH level is safe to kill off all of that bacteria. You can find any of our recipes on our website. I put that link on the slide. If you're not wanting to be a volunteer and go through our program, but are really interested in just food preservation in general, and just either you're a newbie and wanting to learn from scratch, or maybe you know some and just really want to expand your knowledge, we do offer a home food preservation self-study course that can be found on our food preservation page. There is a smaller cost to that as well. But you have access to a self-study course that is divided into, I believe, 8 modules that kind of dives into each topic and method of food preservation a little bit more, and dives into whether you're canning an acid food, acidified food, a basic or maybe a low acid food. So that course is a resource that we have for the public. And then something new that Hope and I have ventured into is having a Facebook group. So if you haven't joined us and are interested in following us along our food preservation journey and just wanting to learn tips and tricks throughout the year, we do, you can just search Sdsu Extension Food Preservation Facebook group. Thank you. And that was put into the chat. And we share recipes, tips, tricks. If I'm in the kitchen, we're posting kind of live pictures or pictures that we are doing ourselves. We love to hear from you guys, and it just offers a safe place and just a place to share trusted, reliable, evidence-based resources that that you can use and be safe and bring to your house or share with your neighbor. But we like to be a fun group, and so come find us. We just love to talk anything food wise and preserving your produce. All right, I believe that is all I have.
That was a lot of excellent information. Thank you, Megan.
Yes,
If
thank you.
anyone at this time has questions for Megan, please drop them in the Q&A. And if you need a little bit of time to think of your questions, Megan's going to be with us to the end of tonight's session, so we can try to catch a question or two before we wrap up for the evening as well. So if you need a moment to think about your questions, I see that Christina has joined us. So we'll be monitoring the Q&A, and if it's a quick, easy question, Megan might be able to just type a response to you as well. Oh. All right, let's do this question while we're getting Christina queued up. So how long does jelly and jam last?
Absolutely. So if you are following a evidence-based recipe and following proper procedures, the jam and jellies are good on your shelf, and if stored properly, for up to 18 months. So enjoy that freshness. I made some strawberry lemon jam last year, and it turned out fantastic. So nothing like that fresh taste, like I said, in the winter, especially.
Awesome. Thank you, Megan. We're very excited to see Christina here with us tonight to talk about what's going on at McCrory Gardens. I've already seen the photos and they're absolutely gorgeous. So do expect some fall beauties tonight. And Christina, take it away.
All right. Well, thank you guys for having me. And it was really interesting listening to this stuff today. That's really cool. So what's happening at McCrory Gardens? We have a lot of stuff coming up. We have one more party on the porch left. So that takes place this Sunday. So if you're interested in those are a really fun activity to do, is those party on the porches where, you know, you can kind of picnic and eat some food and listen to some really good music. This Sunday is Kyle Knutson who's going to be the music entertainment this weekend. And then another thing to watch out for that's coming up soon in October is our fall festival. Everybody's kind of, you know, gearing up and excited about it in the visitor center. You know, we're decorating, or they're going to be decorating with a bunch of pumpkins and fun things out in the gardens. And there's a lot of activities. I'm going to drop my thing here that's telling me all those activities, because every time I try to just remember it, I forget one. But there's a flower arranging workshop, and that's actually a friend of mine doing that. I think she's going to do a really good job, and it's going to be fun. So check that out. There's going to be a horse-drawn hayride to the Arboretum, which that, you know, those are always really cool with the Sdsu horse team there. The dog days of fall, so you can bring your dogs to explore the gardens. I think the Master Gardeners are having a plant sale as well, and we'll be having lots of fun snacks, and it is free will donation to the gardens, and doing a lot of Arboretum exploring as well that day. So definitely watch for the fall festival too, October 10th. So we can go on to the next slide. So what's blooming? I know I say this every week, you guys, but there's so much still blooming, and there's not even just blooms, but there's a lot of things fruiting, and, you know, kind of beautiful berries and fruits and things like that everywhere, and fall color starting to show up in a lot of things. But one of the things that just right now is shining kind of in every nook and cranny are these asters, particularly the New England asters. They're kind of those taller back of the garden, more wildflower looking asters, but they're super beautiful. The Aster Nova Angliae, they changed up the name a little bit, but it's a New England Aster if you're looking for it. But lots of mums are blooming now as well, and so watch out for some of those beautiful fall bloomers. Hydrangeas, they've actually been going for a few weeks now, but they just really start to shine, I think, in the fall. And even when they start to dry, you can actually see a couple dried flowers on that particular flower. There's a lot that don't have dry ones yet, but there's some that do. And even that, yeah, I believe is really, really lovely. So I love to leave those hydrangea flower heads on the hydrangeas through the summer, or through the winter rather, because it adds that sort of just a really nice winter interest. It's a flower, it's just kind of a dried, beautiful big flower head. But they do really nice in cut arrangement if you have kind of a big one. And this is the first edition's vanilla strawberry. Really, that's just, I don't even know. They're all really nice. A lot of these nice cultivars. I'm a big fan of the hydrangeas, so check those out. Lots of different cultivars everywhere in the garden blooming. So kale. So this is one of our annuals that in our annual beds that are just starting to really shine because all the color in the middle is starting to really get vibrant. This is the Brassica oleracea, the pigeon purple. I love that one, especially when a lot of those other annuals start to frost coming up. It's kind of sadly, I guess, coming up here not too long. We might see some frost. That is just still going to kind of shine and glow in your garden. So I really love those kales, and I like those kind of dense ones with whites and purples in the middle. So this is just a really unique, I just love this Rudbeckia. This is there are some common names. There's kind of a couple different common names for it, like Gloriosa daisy or sweet cone flower. No, it's not an echinacea, it's a Rudbeckia, but it's Rudbeckia subtomentosa. Henry Eilers is the cultivar. And they just look like these crazy little matchsticks, like just tiny little stick-like petals with that, flare at the end. And it's a pretty big Rudbeckia. I would say probably 3 to 4 foot tall. So pretty big, kind of a back of the garden. Again, fall blooming flower, but just super cool. Just unique a little bit too. I usually get a lot of comments on tours like, what is that one? So that's kind of a fun one to integrate into your garden. Can go to the next one. All right, this is another annual grass for us called ruby grass or Malignus nervogloomus. There's a couple cultivars too, but even the straight species, it's that pink. This grass is so beautiful. It is an annual grass. So if you do want to, try it from seed, you want to start it indoors early, just in order to get those lovely pink fluffy seed heads on it, just because they do set pretty late into the season. But even if it doesn't, the foliage, the leaves on it are kind of almost like a bluish gray, really nice, unique color that is really nice in the garden. So, and you can see in that photo on the left, you can just see that it's not, how many things are blooming. It's just a really nice time to visit the garden and see some of these annual beds that are kind of full grown. So, and fall colors. So we have so many fall colors starting to peak. They're just starting in there, but they're really nice. A couple that I captured today is just our euonymus species. So you have like our burning bush and our spindle tree. The spindle trees I talk about on every tour. And I was like, this year I have to get a photo of the leaves. So that's the one on the bottom. That's a tree in AA2. And there's one as well over in by the President's Garden. And I always talk about how it has this pink fall color that where do you see on any tree? And I finally got a picture of some of the pink color. It's not quite in full color yet, but it's a really, really cool, unique tree. And then the maples are starting to turn fall color. Cranberry bush is starting to turn into its fall color. So kind of everywhere you look, you're going to find something really pretty out in the gardens right now. So I think that might be my last one. Yeah. Okay. Well, again, thank you for having me and seeing some garden highlights for right now. And we hope to see you visiting the garden and enjoying some of those things soon.
Christina, I'm so sorry that we had to end the slideshow because it was just so beautiful. And I think that kale would look wonderful in fall containers. And I look forward to another set of photos next week, maybe some of those maples.
Yes, okay, I will definitely get some of those maples. And yes, the kale is really great in fall containers. So yeah, thanks for having me again.
Awesome. Thank you, Christina.
Bye.
And last but not least for this evening, I'm going to welcome Amanda Bachman to the stage, so to speak. And Amanda, I'll just let you get started while I get your screen up for you.
Okay, I am now trying to remember what my first slide was.
Mosquito season.
Mosquito season. All right. Okay, there we go. And it's showing correctly. Yeah. So I don't know about the rest of you in South Dakota, but we in Pierre, it was so dry that we really didn't have mosquitoes present in numbers that were noticeable up until about the end of August, the start of September. We got some rain then, and I think that just really, they were like, oh hey, it's still summer, let's do this thing. So as I've been watering in the evenings, I've definitely had to up my mosquito repellent game. But yeah, it is still mosquito season. It is still West Nile virus season. So if you are out from dusk to dawn, and as I'm sitting here in Pierre, you know, the sun sets just a little bit before 8 p.m. now. So that dusk is coming earlier and earlier. Do make sure that you're wearing your long sleeves, long pants, and a repellent with an EPA approved active ingredient. And so I know, and I think I've said this before, that some people have feelings about DEET. There are non-DEET alternatives that are EPA approved. There's picaridin, there's an compound called IR3535. So please use something like that. Do not mix up essential oils that you saw on social media. Use a legit repellent, because we are seeing, I think our West Nile virus season will be sort of cut off by frost, but we are seeing, you know, more cases every week reported by DOH. So I think had our season started earlier, we would have sort of had an even bigger West Nile virus caseload. So wear your repellents and make sure you're paying attention to any water sources in your yard. You know, if you were in a part of South Dakota that was dry for most of the year, you might have forgotten about, you know, your little drainage dishes underneath your potted plants, or maybe your gutters are getting a little bit funky, buckets, stuff like that. Just make sure to be emptying those sources where you can end up with mosquitoes breeding right in your backyard. Next slide, please. I'm still getting loads of questions about fall wasps. What's interesting is some of them come in the form of people thinking that they've got a honeybee hive that needs to be relocated. And I'd say about 95% of the time, it is not honeybees that they send me a picture of, but some other species of annual wasp. So if you are one of those people that has asked me that question and I ask you for a picture, you know, please don't take offense. I don't trust your identification. Really need to see a picture of the critter. I had one today, and it turns out that they were yellow jackets, which is a ground nesting species of wasp. This is the time of year when those nests are at their largest number. So greatest number of workers, highest strength. Any control measures that you try at this point, if you go out and try to spray them yourself or hire somebody to do it, it will take you know, more product, more effort, and possibly result in more stings. So I would really just recommend, if they are out of the way and they haven't bothered you up until this point, to just wait them out. Our frost date is rapidly approaching across much of South Dakota, and 1 or 2 hard freezes will take care of them. And then in the spring, that's when you need to start scouting to make sure that you catch any nests early and can manage them before they get big. So fall wasps still out there. We want to make sure that we identify them properly. Odds are good that you don't have honeybees. Next slide, please. And then accidental invaders. I talked last time I was on about 2 weeks ago about, you know, like box elder bugs and the multicolored Asian lady beetle and some of those insects that overwinter as adults and, you know, make their way into our homes. But if you have plants outside, if you've got, in my case, I've got a bunch of succulents, that hang out outdoors during the summer, and then I bring them back inside during the fall. And while they're outside, those pots definitely get colonized by isopods, the picture there on the right, roly-poly, pillbug, it's got a lot of common names. You know, earwigs can hang out in there. Obviously, spiders might make their home in the foliage, but there are a lot of things that might be living in your potted plants. And then when you bring them inside, they may emerge from those potted plants. So I recommend that if you can somehow, you know, quarantine your potted plants before you bring them inside. If you've got a garage that you can kind of sort of triage them in before they make the full transition to indoors, some of those critters can escape before they end up in your home. And then my last slide is my cool insect. I was super stoked to be at McCrory Gardens back on September 11th. We did Insect Fest. It was a great time. We will be doing Insect Fest again next year. It will be on September 10th, 2022. So mark your calendars if you're in that area to come see us. But as I was packing up and getting ready to leave, I pretty much had to drop what I was carrying so I could get a picture of a Viceroy butterfly. The only other one I had run across in South Dakota was dead in the grill of my car, so I was very excited to get a picture of a live one that was flying around the straw bale house and in the Native American plant garden. And so the Viceroy is the picture on the left. And you can see I have a picture of a monarch on the right, so you can kind of compare them. They're in a very similar pose. The Viceroy on the hind wings, there's sort of an extra horizontal sort of margin running sort of through that bottom third of the hind wing. So it's sort of an arc that kind of parallels the curve of the hind wing. And if you look at the monarch butterfly, you will see that it doesn't have that line. So the Viceroy is a mimic. It's playing off of the fact that monarch butterflies don't taste good to predators. And so it's counting on its, you know, very similar black and orange coloration to keep it safe from birds and other things that might eat it. So size-wise, they're a little bit smaller than the monarch, but size is not usually a good identifying factor. You want to look for that extra sort of vein on the hind wings if you want to make sure that you've got a monarch or a Viceroy. So it was just super cool to see, and the monarchs are definitely migrating. They should have moved through most of South Dakota by now, but there might be some stragglers that are still heading south. I saw a news report that monarchs were showing up on the radar in Oklahoma. So they kind of mass up even more the farther south they get, and they are headed to Mexico. So that is all I have for insects this week. We've got some time for questions. So if folks have any questions for me or any of our remaining panelists, I think Megan is still on, and Christine, feel free to throw those into the Q&A. And we will mention that next week is our very last garden hour of 2021.
Yes. Amanda, thank you for breaking the bad news. Then I didn't have to.
I mean, it might be bad news for them, but we get our Tuesdays back.
To soften the blow, perhaps potentially, we will be distributing the Yard and Garden newsletter for 2 more weeks through the end of October. And then we're going to take a little break from that as well. And, you know, but just know in the off season, we're just retooling and planning for this for 22 already. So, you know, thank you to folks who have expressed gratitude or given us feedback through emails or in the chat. Please know you're always welcome to do that. We really appreciate that. Amanda, while folks are maybe thinking of a question, I've thought of one for you, and I've also thought of one for Megan. So how rare is the Viceroy? Because you know, if you were willing to drop everything to take a picture, how rare is it? And is there any reason it's so rare?
I don't think it's necessarily rare. It's just like it's just like, you know, monarchs, you just kind of run across them more. So it's not like it's endangered or anything. It's just, and I also sort of have like a mental catalog in my head of like when, you know, I've done presentations like, man, I wish I had a picture of, you know, X, Y, or Z. And mine was always, man, I wish I had a good picture of a Viceroy. So that was part of the reason why I dropped everything.
Well, now I'm going to have to look closer every time I assume I'm seeing a monarch. That maybe does not hold true. So Megan, I've got a question for you. I have a, the pressure canner. I got one for my wedding. I have been, let's say, too lazy or perhaps too scared to use it. So it's been sitting in a box for a couple of years. But if I'd like to pull that out, let's say next summer to can green beans, is there anything I need to do to make sure that it's, safe or usable and not hopefully going to blow up in my kitchen?
That's a great question. I am still like learning with pressure canners, so I'm with you. Like they're intimidating. And I think that's why some people are like timid or scared to try because they just don't know how. And years ago they did tend to blow up in people's faces, but they've added safety features, so which limit that. So my question to you is, do you have a dial gauge or a weighted gauge pressure canner?
That's a great question.
Circle with a needle?
Yes.
Okay. Or is it like a weight that you would put on? Okay, if it's a dial, those have to be checked every year for accuracy because they could be off by 1 pound, and that means you could under pressure or even sometimes over pressure. The bad thing, or not the bad thing, the unfortunate thing is there's only a few select places in South Dakota that will test dial gauges. We do have those locations on our website, but with you being in Brookings, I'm not for sure if Runnings does there in Brookings, but the Ace Hardware in Sioux Falls, they do check dial gauges.
Excellent.
So that would be my first step. And then we do have a publication on step-by-step of what to do with pressure canning different foods. So that would be, or step 3, email me and I'll let you know.
Awesome.
Yeah. Megan, with pressure canners, is there anything about checking the gasket too?
Yes.
If it's been in storage for a while.
If it's been stored, sometimes those can crack really easily. So just running your hands around it, making sure that there's no cracks, that will make sure that you're having a nice tight seal and air can't release outside of that.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Megan. I already feel better, but I'll probably be emailing you next summer for sure.
Absolutely.
So we do have a question. What are the testing sites for canning recipes? I'm going to guess that's a Megan question.
Yes. So on our website, I think the link was put in the chat, but we do have recipes on our website. But I always refer people to the USDA Home Canning Guide. USDA, all of their recipes have been tested, or any other extension website, their food preservation pages, they're also going to be a trusted source. Ball, also the company Ball, their canning cookbook, but only the recent publications. If you have like old versions of the Ball canning book, I would suggest maybe not following those, or maybe comparing to a newer version, just because some of those recipes hadn't been tested. But if you have a newer version of the Ball book, those are good to use.
Thank you. Yes, I inherited a very old version of the Ball canning guide and have realized that the times, for example, have changed for how long you should be processing things. All right. So Megan, we're going to let you take the last question to round out the day. So if we use the current Ball recipes, can those canned items be sold at the farmer's market?
That is a great question. So all of any home canned foods have to be sent in and tested in order to be sold at farmers markets. That's kind of outside of my wheelhouse, but I can put Curtis Braun. He is our food safety field specialist, and he works with consumers who are looking to sell their homed goods at a farmer's market, and he can work with you on getting those products tested to ensure that they are indeed safe to use at a farmer's market. And I will put his contact information in.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And while Megan's doing that, I just want to remind everyone that if you think of questions later tonight or, on your walk back to the living room because you were sitting outside enjoying this beautiful fall evening while you watched us, you can contact the SDSU Extension Garden Hotline. Again, this is free for South Dakota home gardeners, and we have wonderful staff located in Aberdeen, Rapid City, and Sioux Falls, and you are welcome to contact any one of these locations, and they will work with you on your gardening questions. And, if you didn't get a chance to catch something tonight and you want to be put into contact with Megan, we'd be happy to do that for you as well. I realize we've shared a lot of information in the chat tonight, and I just want to express gratitude for all of our panelists. Aimee, Christina, Megan, Amanda, thank you all so much for joining us tonight. And again, this is our second to last garden hour for the season. Fall is going to kick in between now and next week, aka tomorrow. So enjoy the fall weather, enjoy the beautiful colors, whether it's in your own yard or a visit to McCrory Gardens or a visit to a garden wherever you are in the state. And we look forward to seeing you next week for our final episode of the season. So thank you, everyone, and have a great evening.